been pretty cold lately.
Yes.
The other day we got about 2 inches of snow, which is a lot for our area. Were
Absolutely.
you prepared?
No. I only have one raincoat, and I'm from the area.
And nothing to clean your car off with.
Hello, and welcome to the Resilient Lineage podcast, where we reflect on the past, anticipate the future, and discover what God is up to today. I'm Olivia.
No, Milo.
Yeah. Whoa, jinx.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, you owe me a Coke.
Okay. So, yeah, we got quite the storm. I guess Virginians don't know what snow is, so everyone started freaking out. And my classes got canceled that day. And work got canceled that day. So I really had nothing to do. But the next day, I had to go to work and realized I have nothing to clean off my car.
Yeah, you know, what I realized was, you know, most folks will keep like a scraper in their car and like a little brush thing to brush off snow. And we used to have all that stuff. But when we went to Spain, where we were at in Spain, we didn't have any of that. We sold our vehicles before we went over there. And when we sold the vehicles, we got rid of all that stuff. And since we've been back, we haven't experienced any of that kind of weather. Mm-hmm. And so I hadn't thought about putting those things in the car. So like when, you know, we had that snow out on the car, I went out and I realized I had like a little wisp broom that I use in the garage to sweep things up. So I had to take that out, and that's what I used to get the snow off. And then I had ice on the windshield. And I thought, well, I don't have a scraper. Wait, I do have a sort of scraper. I have a drywall mudding tool that I went and got. So, you know, it actually worked really.
How does that not like crack your glass?
Because you're just gliding it along the top. You're not stabbing the glass.
Yeah.
Actually, it works way better than the plastic one.
I think my method was smarter.
What was your method?
My method, I would work at 6:15 a.m. I was outside with 2 spatulas at 5:45. So
were they plastic or metal?
So one was actually plastic with a metal handle, and then the other one was what's it called? Silicone? Yeah. It's like silicone. Okay. So it's like soft. Like I was like, I'm not damaging my car. And then I had it on like defrost mode. Yeah, but it was just so cold. I took my roommate's gloves that day.
Yeah, and
they were just laying out, and I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah, it's still pretty cold out. So we're sitting here. I just warmed myself up a nice cup of hot tea. You have a blanket around your legs to keep yourself warm. So
I got the cat
wherever you're at listening to this podcast. We hope that you're dry and warm and enjoying this time of year. Today we are continuing. This is kind of part 3 of our stewardship series. So a couple podcasts ago, episode 51, we looked at the general idea of stewardship. And then last week we looked at episode 52, we looked at
money.
Your money, the role of your finances. And then today we're going to talk about time. So just to recap, if you haven't listened to episode 51, go back and listen to that, because we kind of lay out some of how we're approaching this. And we look at Matthew chapter 25 when Jesus is talking about the parable of the talents and how one is entrusted with 4, another with 2. Or is it 5, 2, and 1? Yeah. Yeah, 5, 2, and 1. And then how, anyway, I'm not going to redo the podcast. You can go back and listen to that if you haven't listened to it already. But just really quickly, some of the things we recognize in that episode is that one of the things we need to do in our pursuit of living the life that God intends for us is we have to commit to our role as steward. So the resources that God has entrusted to us, they're not ours. It's not like with our money we give God 10% and we get to do what we want with the other 90%. Or I go to church on Sundays, but I can do whatever I want with my time the rest of the week. Or I volunteer my time at this place, but I can spend my time outside of that. I can do with it whatever I want. You know, so that's not the intent. The intent is kind of like the whole of our lives is intended to be stewarded. So we need to commit to that kind of that title or that role that we're supposed to have in life. Yeah.
So the last couple weeks, we've talked about committing yourself as a role of steward and develop like a maximize mentality. And then giving an accounting for your actions.
Yeah, and that maximized mentality, it's like I have some money invested, right? And so I'm investing it in a way that I can maximize that investment so that when, we go to retire, what those funds are intended for, the most amount there that has been invested can be withdrawn when that time comes, right? So even like the house, we're fortunate enough to have our own house, but I have to make continual investments in the house to keep it maintained properly, and when things break, that they get repaired quickly, and all of those kind of stuff. So that kind of, so think about that with our lives. What does it look like to maximize my life in a way that is honoring to the Lord? And then that shouldn't bring on stress and anxiety, right? That should kind of launch us into a place of adventure and curiosity. Like that's the posture the Lord wants us to have. And then, like you said, give an accounting for our actions. That there's a transparency to the way I'm doing this, that I need to be, someday we're going to stand before the Lord. We're going to have to give accounting for our lives. What did we do with him? What did we do in response to him and to those that are around us, and the responsibilities that we carried? Yeah. But today,
we've already talked about talents. And so this week we're going to be talking about money. And then this week we're going to be talking about time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I shared this before, but like stewardship has just been one of the words that I've been reflecting on for this year. And I talked about this in the last 2 podcasts, where it's like I'm in the season of life where I kind of already anticipate the next couple years. Like I'm not necessarily tied to you and Mom anymore, which is like different.
Yeah.
So my way of life is going to be different, and your orders, like I'm great for your orders, but like I'm not in those discussions anymore of like, this is what it's going to look like. This is when we're going to move. These are what you need to be praying about. It's like,
here's the school you're going to be going to,
right.
Or the friends,
or like thinking ahead. Like that's not my chapter.
Yeah. And you're in a totally different chapter.
Dad's like, you're in a different book. Different genre, other side of the library.
I don't know. We're in the young adult section over there.
I'm in the children's section. So yeah. Anyway, so today's big idea. Do you want me to just go for it?
Sure.
Yeah. So the big idea is what you spend your time doing determines what you will be good at.
Yeah. And I think that's as we were preparing these notes, as I thought about that, I think that sounds so obvious, but I'm not entirely sure folks talk and think in those terms.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you, so if we were to kind of, last week we talked about money, and if we were to look at your money, what would it say about your priorities? What would it say about the focus of your life? You could do something similar with your time. If we were to look at your time, what would it tell us you're getting good at? Are you getting good at doom scrolling on Instagram? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you getting good at video games? Are you getting good at
sports?
Watching sports? I mean, like pick your thing. Like, and I'm not saying any of those things are wrong. Are you getting really good at being alone? Are you getting good at being with others? There's any skill that we develop is developed within the context of time.
Yeah.
And so like as a household, we talk about connect, equip, worship, serve. And that, in fact, we had that. We weren't going to talk about that, but actually I think this makes
sense.
Yeah. Because and there's a whole episode we did on this, and I don't know which one that is in front of me, but we kind of our 4 family practices we talk about is connect, that is living in healthy relationships, equip, which is living in effective skills, right? Living into those effective skills or developing those things or helping others develop those things. Worship, living into an eternal perspective, right? So my eyes are fixed on Christ.
Right.
Fixed on God and who he is, whether that's in public expression or private expression, and then serve, meaning I live into a mission that's greater than myself. And so, okay, your mom and I established those 4 things as a family probably back in 2003, 2004. And we've been living with those for the last 21 years as very much like we evaluate our time based upon those things. And so I like playing sports. I like playing golf, but it's a significant financial expense And therefore, it's something that, and it's time away from your mom when you kids were here at the house. So when I choose to do golf is when I can do it with others, because then I can justify it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not an athlete. I'm moderately athletic, but not like
he's super athletic.
He's so athletic.
I have no idea. If you saw him, you'd be like jawed to the ground.
Holy cow! Yeah.
I know my mom's listening to this. Like, I know.
I enjoy doing athletic things. Like growing up, I played baseball, and I was in track and field in high school, and would play pickup basketball all the time. So I enjoy those kind of things. But now, like, I enjoy those things as they give me opportunity to connect with others, right? Or they give me the opportunity to learn something. Like right now, one of the things I really admire in the athletic field is the team dynamics that are cultivated. Like what people learn about work team, what they learn about their strengths and trusting in the strengths of others to achieve a common objective. I think that is something that is uniquely and distinctly cultivated in team sports that oftentimes doesn't exist in other parts of society. Because I look at some folks and I think I can kind of trail some of their cooperative success with others to their involvement in team sports at one particular time. My point is this. So we have this connect, equip, worship, serve. Those are practices that we call them practices because what do you have to do? You have to practice them. There's a skill developed in each one of those things, and those things take time to do. And so in light of that, the things, like you said, kind of our big idea we're wrestling with today is what I'm spending my time doing is going to shape what I'm getting good at. And so I can say I want to be good at something, but what time am I giving to that thing? I can say, man, I really wish I was part of a meaningful community. Well, what are you doing to step into that? I can say, man, I really wish I knew how I had this skill or I developed that. I really wish I had a closer walk, personal, intimate walk with the Lord, or I really wish I was a part of a mission that was greater than myself. Okay, great. If we were to look at your schedule, would we see any time allocated for those things? And if the answer is, well, probably not, then what I would say is like all you have is wishful thinking at that point. You don't have an actual intentional strategy to get there. And your strategy will always take place within a time and a space. And so oftentimes when I talk about these things with folks, like in a one-on-one, like pastoral counseling or discipleship setting, they'll say, I want to do this thing, or I need to step into this thing. And I'll ask them, okay, when and where are you going to do that? And right there, all of a sudden, they have to get specific very quickly because everything happens in time and space. And so if I can't answer that question of when am I going to do it and where am I going to do it, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The minute I can articulate that, the minute I can say where, I can imagine the space in which it's going to take place. And when I say when, now I've said there's things that will happen up to that point, and then I'm committed to making it happen. And then there's things that happen after that point. But in my day, there's going to be this moment in time where I'm committed to doing this thing. And so the reason why this becomes something that we need to steward is because of the nature of time. Okay, so do you want me to get into all of this? I feel like I'm going to be doing a bit of talking.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just chime in.
Okay, you chime in when you need to.
I'll drop some bombs.
All right. In the New Testament, the Greek word has two words for time. One is Chronos and one is Kairos. So Chronos time. Where do you think we get chronological, right? That's where we get our sense of chronology. So this is kind of sequential time. This is a time that refers to the order of things, right? I woke up this morning. I looked at my alarm. I realized I had 15 more minutes before I had to get up, but I decided to get up anyway, and then I brushed my teeth. Like I could walk you through the chronology of my day, right? Yeah. Okay, that's Chronos time. Kairos time is like moment time. So you're like, hey, what'd you do this morning? I would I'm not going to say like, well, I woke up and I saw my, like, that's not how we talk, right? When you look at somebody and say like, hey, what'd you do this morning? We usually talk in kairotic terms, meaning there's a moment that we describe. So this morning, this is a Saturday, and our church just finished up what we call 21 days of prayer, and we were up at our main campus, and I don't know, there's maybe 2,000 other people at this service that we were at, and it was a morning of worship and prayer and baptisms, and we even had like, there was a small group of us that got together and we took communion with one another, and like it was just a kind of a time to sort of wrap up these 21 days of prayer, praise God for the answers to prayer over these last 21 days, continue to live in anticipation that he's still going to answer prayer moving forward, that we are living in this time where it seems that God is present, that God is active, that God is moving. That was our morning. Okay, what did I do? I just described a moment, right? That's kairos. So with the Greek, there's this sort of two ways of thinking about time, chronology and kairos, and they go, we need both of them in our lives.
Yes.
So, the problem is what I see is people look for kairotic moments, right? They want those wonderful moments that are special, that are unique, that we kind of look back on fondly of, that when we're in them, it seems significant and special. But we struggle with laying out a Chronos way of ordering our days, because that is less sexy.
Yeah.
Right? It's not very exciting. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel very, special, satisfying in the moment. So, but that's really where, like, that's where the maturity is going to be cultivated, is I'm going to do this thing, not because I feel it. I'm going to do it. The feeling will come later, right?
Yeah.
In fact, oftentimes when you think of kairotic moments, like, those are the emotional moments that it built towards something. But this chronos, right? Like I talked about, this is a 21 days of prayer. There's 21 days. There's a lot of days of getting up and not feeling like praying, not feeling like reading my Bible, not feeling like this is building towards something. Does that make sense? But everybody wants that capstone moment.
Right.
Thoughts?
No, like the image that just comes to my head is like a field. Like every farmer they do the things what they're doing because they anticipate a reward or a cultivation or a harvest.
Yeah.
But they have to get up, and back in scripture, like they waited on, if there was a drought, they waited on rain. They waited on when certain things were going to come in, whether they were going to go out. They needed to till the ground. Like there's all these moving parts you have to do it chronologically. Like, you can't water the ground without tilling it. Like, there's an order to which we're supposed to do things so that we can experience the moments God wants us to experience.
And that takes time. And you're going to make mistakes along the way, right? There's always going to be these moments you look back and go like, I should have done this before I did that.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, got it. Because guess what these things require? Practice, right? These are things that take time to learn, but you have to be prepared to invest the time. And this is one of the things that, I had to learn in my life, because I have a tendency to want to get things like right the first time, which is a typical like firstborn trait. So I will do research, I'll watch things, I'll learn things, but I also have a pretty strong impatient streak in me. So I also, like, when I get something, I want to dive in and I want to do it quick. And so, like, I have to slow down and intentionally walk myself through things. And I've learned over time to make sure I budget enough time for failure.
That's good.
So, like, I was wanting to work on the brakes on your mom's car. And I was watching this video on how to do it, YouTube. It's a great tutorial today. And this guy says, this job should take about 3 hours, but you should budget about 6 to do it, because something's going to go wrong. Like, you're going to realize you don't have a part, something might break, something might slow you down. There might be a nut that takes longer to loosen and get off. And he says, if you think this is going to take me 6 hours and it takes you 4, you got it done in 4. If you think this should take 3 hours and it takes you 4,
you're just going to be frustrated.
Right. Now you're annoyed. Now you're frustrated. And so, the last thing you want to do, particularly when you're doing something like breaks, is you don't want to rush that project. You want to do it right. You want to do it in a very intentional, methodical way and give yourself room to make some mistakes or not do things as efficiently as, maybe it could be done. But do it in a way that you're kind of building into those skills and that practice, right? It's that chronos, right? I'm doing this intentionally over an extended period of time. And so when we think about stewardship and stewarding our time, we have to wisely order that chronos.
Yes.
So that we can put ourselves in a position to experience the kairos. And so how do I do that? How do I order my days in a manner that put me in a spot to be able to experience these delightful moments that the Lord has for me?
Yeah. So we broke this down into like three, I don't know, how-tos.
Yeah, and we have some passages of scripture highlighted here that talk about time. So like the first one, Psalm 90, verse 12. Says, teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom.
Yeah, so like the practice is number your days. So, I mean, if you just look at your day, mornings are great, right? It depends on what you're doing that day or you anticipate. Like when you first thing get up, nothing's really gone wrong yet. You kind of have a fresh start. And you kind of determine what you're going to do today. But if you have a plan, like, I'm going to get up, I'm going to get ready, going to read my Bible, have class, going to go do that, have work this evening, need a budget time for homework, then your day will grow consistently over time.
Yeah.
I'd say.
And it's like and this scales into a bunch of different areas. So like this is something I learned. I didn't know this until I was in 2005. So I would have been like 29 years old. And I was pastoring a church plant. We were starting. And Tim Rail was my coach. Great guy, good friend, asked me really good questions. And I was struggling to order my days in a very consistent manner. And one of the things that was happening was I was working a lot of hours and family time was getting squeezed out. And one of the things that Tim said is he says, break your day into thirds, so morning, afternoon, evening, and give your family one of those thirds. So for me, a lot of my time was in the evening because when are church people available to meet and connect? And
mornings and afternoons.
Yeah. Well, no. Actually, early morning and in the evenings. And so there was guys that I would connect with because we were building up some men's ministry stuff. There was guys that I could connect with, but they could connect after 8 p.m. at night. Well, I'm still, I've got to prepare. There's things I got to get ready. I'm connecting with those guys, right? That's part of my responsibility as a pastor. But it's in these evening hours. And then what I realized was, guess when most folks aren't available? In early afternoon. Because they're wrapping up their work day. They're not home yet. They got stuff they got to get done before. So what we started doing was I would work in the morning, and then at like 1 o'clock, and you guys were super little, right? So you were born there, and your brother's a couple of years older than you. So when we got there, so like at 1 o'clock, I would stop working, and then we would eat lunch together as a family, and we'd go to the park pool. Because our neighborhood had a swimming pool. And we would swim at the pool till 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was a big chunk of our family. There was like 2 or 3 hours there that we were together as a family. I wasn't on my laptop. I wasn't, checking phone. Because part of it was that was the time that made the most sense for us as a family. And that was the time when the church needed me the least.
Yeah.
And so and guess what? Guess where nobody is in the afternoon in a neighborhood pool? I just answered my own question. Yeah, you just
answered it.
Okay. The thing is, that's the other piece, is like nobody was at the pool. And so it turned into like this win on a variety of levels. But Tim was the one that kind of helped me see that and unlock that. And so when we break our days down into thirds like that, we're able to kind of go, when do I think the best? I'm a morning guy. That's when I'm sharp, right? Your mom and your brother, they're evening people. And so it makes sense for them to shift some things to that time period, because that's when their brain is the sharpest. And so in light of that, like, order your day the way it needs to be ordered in light of who you are and the way God has designed you. Now, here's the thing. So looking at a typical month, okay, 30 days. Let's just say 30 days. I know February has a little bit less, but there's some other months that have more, right? So 30 days, over the course of 30 days, that's 90 blocks of time. So there's 30 mornings, 30 afternoons, and 30 evenings. So how could you look at that? If you had said, man, if I only had 30 mornings, okay, you've got 30 mornings or 30 afternoons, how could you organize those times in a way that is beneficial? And then break it down even further from there, like break it down into hours. So that's 480 hours, because I took out sleeping time. Okay, so that doesn't count sleeping. There's 480 hours a month. How are you spending that time? And then break it down even further into 15-minute chunks, because a lot of things can happen in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Or 30-minute blocks, right? Sometimes we look at things like, oh, that's going to take me 20 minutes to do. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, what if you just did it now? And you said, I'm going to give 30 minutes to get that done, and then it's done. Right? I'm going to fire off that email. I'm going to walk across the street and meet that neighbor. I'm going to, whatever it is, right? I'm going to go do the grocery shopping now. Whatever your responsibilities you're carrying, breaking it down into those 15-minute chunks, all of a sudden becomes very doable. Now, I was looking at my calendar today, and guess how most calendars are organized? In these like 15 half-hour chunks. You can
tweak it,
manipulate it, but it kind of defaults to that, right? Even my reminders, because there's some stuff I had to type in to remind myself of today. It was broken into, what do you want to get done this morning, afternoon, and evening, right? Yeah. So like time management, and this is, I don't want to get into a bunch of time management stuff. My point is this, that the scripture calls us to number our days. Like, this is not just how to live an awesome life. It's like, I mean, no, this is some of the mandate we have as Christ followers, is to look at our days and go, if I believe that the Lord has given me this day, this is the day that the Lord has made, right? That he is giving me air to breathe in this day, then what am I doing with it?
Yeah.
How am I using the 16 hours I have today to advance his kingdom, to connect with others, to learn, or to equip others, or to worship him? Like, how am I spending that time? How am I numbering those things in an intentional way? So that's the first thing.
Yeah. Second, listen and accept instruction for future days. So Proverbs 19:20 says, listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future. So that just made me think of something else. I think planning is healthy, but setting unrealistic expectations is not. And I feel like that's where we run into a lot of issues, where I'm like a big, I don't know, I went through this like obsession where I loved watching people's like morning routines or night routines. I'm like, I'm going to do that. And that's like the expectation for the next day.
We're like YouTube stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, wake up at like 6 a.m., and start the coffee. And it's like this super aesthetic video. And you're just like, wow. They have it together.
When I wake up at 6 a.m., I go downstairs
and I brush my hair.
Then while that's brewing, I go in and brush my teeth. And then I pet my cat. She's always so lovely in the morning. Is that those kind of videos?
If it talked like that, I think I'd turn it off. I'd be like, that's not soothing.
They all have the same tone, though.
They do. And it's like this super like whimsical music of like chimes. Yeah. And it's like relaxation. Yeah. And it's like, I'm going to spend 10 minutes reading this awesome book. And I like search up the book and I'm just like, why are you reading that? But then that becomes like an expectation and an idea of what it needs to look like versus just sitting down and applying what you need to do to when you need to do it. So I took this piece of advice from you, and starting off in college, you do not want to look at the syllabus because it's only going to bring like discomfort. And I mean, sure, like you can get excited. Like if it's a class you actually want to take,
sure,
you're excited to see who your professor is. What's the background behind this class? Like, why is it necessary to the school? But there's like the list of assignments that are in the back of everything that you need to get done and the due dates for that. So you actually you're a very more organized person than I am. I think it's just because I'm always scatterbrained and I always just move from one thought to the next thought without just pausing thoughts and doing what I'm supposed to do. But you put it like in a spreadsheet of every assignment due by date so that you can set up your week and your days accordingly so you can maximize the most time you have to this given assignment in this given week so that it is your best work when you turn it in. Now, me being like I have a paper due tomorrow. I found out Wednesday, and have I started? No, I just started doing the readings 10 minutes before starting this episode. And it's frustrating. So I'm like, maybe next week is when I'll just start. But the very first week of school, I made a spreadsheet of every assignment due for the semester of all 6 of my classes. And it was long.
It is long.
I was just so defeated.
It can be intimidating.
Yeah. But like once you just start checking them off, like it gets more satisfying.
Yeah. And that's so, I mean, to be honest with you, I created that spreadsheet, but I'm also a 48-year-old man who has learned over time. That's what I have to do for me to be able to work through that process and not let things slip and not let, it also allows me to know what other responsibilities I can pick up along the way.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes there's things in our lives that there's significant responsibilities and we need to do them well and we need to do them with excellence because it honors God, it glorifies Him, and because of the people that are relying upon us. At the same time, I also think sometimes those things can chew up more bandwidth in our minds than they actually should be taking in our calendar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like when you had these readings, if you would have said, hypothetically, on Thursday, I'm going to have half of the readings done. Mm-hmm. Friday, I'm going to have the second half of the readings done. Saturday, I'm going to get my first draft done. Sunday, I'm going to review my draft, make edits, and then turn it in, right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's like, well, it's over 4 days. But it's like, it's not really that much time. Now it turns into this, and I've been there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I did not know how to study. Some of this is like, how do you learn to study? Which, that's kind of the point of this passage of scripture is like, listen and accept instruction. I think a lot of people think they're the exception to the rule. Do you know what I mean?
Everyone.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's good for someone else. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, probably, but it might be good for you too.
Yeah.
So what do you need to hear and what do you need to accept, which requires humility and requires you being honest about how good have you been at ordering your life. And if it hasn't been very good, and that's not like, and I don't say that to judge or to be condemning. I don't know anybody that's listening. I mean, I know people listening to this podcast, but I don't know the intricacies of their life. So I'm not I have no one in mind other than myself when I say, look, step back and take an honest assessment and go, am I really listening and accepting the advice that has been given to me? And sometimes we want to listen to more advice, or we want to chase down another thing because we're looking for a shortcut, or we're looking for a way that's going to help alleviate some of the work that just needs to get done. Yeah. And the reality is like, no, you might have enough tips and tricks right now. You got plenty. Get it done. And anyway, we could go on and on and on about this. So for here, okay, so assess the instruction that you need. So ask the question, what do I already know about this situation? So what do I already, take yourself for example with this. What do I already know about me when it comes to reading? How much do you like reading? Be honest.
Honest.
It's not your favorite.
1 out of 10. Yeah, I rank it 1.
You don't like reading.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know, if I have to do some reading in order for me to get to a paper, that's my biggest obstacle. Sitting down and writing out my thoughts and putting together interesting ways of framing things, you enjoy that.
Yeah.
Right? But like getting the material, right? That's the hardest thing. That's like grabbing a pickaxe and going, there's gold in that mine. I've got to go get it out. And that's the least fun part.
Yeah.
Right? Is the pickaxe.
And it's also just like understanding. I'm the most impatient person in my reading pace. I think Regent wants you to read ideally 350 words a minute. And I think I'm at 20. Like
You're
it's
more than that.
It's like,
but it's a lot,
to
right?
understand. Like it's not reading to read, and it will just like make sense as I go. It's like I have to like be intentionally there.
Well, some of this is because you're also reading new concepts, and there's new ways of framing things, right? And the more familiar you become with the subject matter, the more quickly you can read through it.
That's fair.
The thing is that you already know that about yourself, right?
Yeah.
So then the second question was, so what do I need to know to get started?
To just read.
Right? I need to know that this is the hardest part of the process for me. And so in light of that, I probably have to give myself a little bit more time, and I'm going to have to start sooner than I would rather start. The second is accept. So this passage says listen and accept, right? So accept the instruction that you have already received. So ask, when am I going to start this? And when am I going to finish? It's important to have those kind of two things in place because, you know, we did an episode called, you know, Finish It, right? The value of finishing things. A lot of people will focus on starting something, but they won't necessarily focus on finishing something unless someone imposes a deadline. But when you impose a deadline on yourself, today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start reading at 2 and I'm going to finish reading at 3. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep my butt in the seat until that's done. Well, if you know that, like, I'm not going to do that. Like, if you need 45-minute breaks, and from 1 to 1:45, I'm reading. Then I'm going to take 15 minutes, pet the cat, and go get something to drink. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's like knowing these things about ourselves and not creating unrealistic expectations, because that's oftentimes when these things implode. So accepting and receiving that advice becomes really, really critical to being able to map out my plan. Because I think sometimes we order our days or we come up with a plan because we think it looks good and we think it looks responsible and it's something somebody else will admire, not because it's actually functional.
Right.
And if we're really going to steward our time for God's purposes, it has to be functional. Okay, number 3. In Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, Paul is writing the church here, and he says, look carefully, and the word careful there means accurately. So look carefully then how you walk, not as wiser, but as not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of what? Time. And the Greek word there is kairos. Making the best use of the moments that the Lord is giving you. Well, how do you get to those moments? You got to watch how you walk. So the steps that you take, you got to be attentive to that, right? You got to be accurate with how you're walking those steps. And again, I believe the Spirit wants to give wisdom and the Spirit wants to give power and he wants to provide counsel and advice. Like God's going to give us everything we need to do this. The question is, how are we going to step into it in an intentional and meaningful way? Yeah.
And you know, the scriptures, like, do not worry for tomorrow. Like, tomorrow has its own problem. So with this, meaning that you're going to use your time well. Like, if you're not doing anything today, it's just going to bombard tomorrow's tasks.
Yes.
But if you order your day accordingly with how you need to order it and how God needs you to order it, you shouldn't worry about anything. Sure, there's going to be times where we're not going to know what we're going to do tomorrow or what you might eat tomorrow or what circumstance you're in. But if you live your life according to how God needs you to live it, don't worry about it.
Which is really easy to say.
Right.
And I mean, everything is easier to say than do. So we recognize that. And that's where I would say if somebody's in a difficult situation where they're not, there's significant stressors when they think about the tomorrows. I would say, take a step back and just look at the responsibilities you carry today. How much of those are responsibilities that the Lord has put upon you versus others have demanded of you that you need to create some healthy boundaries with. How many of those are responsibilities that, are born out of, the kind of internal stuff that you got to work through because they're the result of shame and guilt and things that the Lord wants to release you of. So there's, it's beyond the scope of this episode, but there's some internal heart and soul work that the Lord wants to do in that in order for us to be able to walk with wisdom, right? And that's really what the intent here is that there's a path, and because God is infinitely creative, He will give you a creative path to walk through the moment that you're in. And sometimes you look back and go like, how was that? How did I do that? How did I walk that so, that was a bit of a tightrope. I don't know how. I don't know. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know how well I did it. I'm just surprised I made it through it. Do you know what I mean? And there are those times when you look back, but like when you focus on those, what do I got to get done this afternoon? If I break that by hours, what are the hours I'm going to commit myself to? If I break those down to 15 minutes, okay, how could I? And I know there's some people like, this is a very anal personality type. Folks are like, I'm not doing any of that. Like, I'll just deal with it as it comes. Fine. But you might not be, there's some folks that can kind of naturally float through these things. But most folks, I think, have to, because our world, particularly the culture we live in, constantly wants to suck up our time. I recently heard this last week that the typical American spends 83 hours a week digesting content.
Whoa. Are there 83 hours in a week?
Yes. I mean, but that's 2 jobs worth.
Yeah.
Now, that obviously includes time that you spend at work, right? But if you think about it, when you look at your phone, what are you doing?
Digesting content.
Digesting content. When you open your laptop, what are you doing?
Digesting content.
When somebody texts you, when somebody, like any time you are looking at information, you're digesting content.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you choose to like do nothing, but I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch a show. What are you doing? Digesting content. When you're like, your mom and I are, I haven't done because it's been super cold the last few days, but we're trying to get in the habit of like walking in the afternoon with one another, just sort of using that as a time to debrief with each other. So when we're out on the walk, what are we doing with one another?
Digesting content.
Digesting content. I'm listening to her. She's listening to me. We're talking through some different scenarios, right? So it's not unreasonable to think then that there's a lot of time out there that we digest content, and all of that content wants you to spend your time in a certain way. All of that content. And so if you don't know how to order your life in a manner that says, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, then it becomes very easy to become a slave or a servant to someone else's calendar or someone else's agenda.
Yeah, that's good. And like the points with that, walk with wisdom. Like live by a calendar that allows you to see things that are being accomplished, and then spend your time on purpose and looking carefully with how you walk. Like live by a calendar that allows you to see the things that are being accomplished, so that you have like a gauge of productivity. Let me just restart. I just said like 40 times. But I like looking at like a task list and like checking it off.
Sure.
And when you have like 3 things left, it's like I'll just get that done. So then tomorrow, like.
And that's a type of calendar, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be something on your screen. It doesn't have to be a flip calendar that hangs on the wall. It can be those things. It can be a pad of paper with a to-do list on it. Things to do this afternoon.
Yeah.
Right? It can be whatever it is. The point is to target your time towards accomplishing the tasks that God has asked you to steward. And I think if we'll do that consistently over time, there will be these beautiful moments where God shows up and we see his faithfulness and how, like, because we've been diligent, we've been obedient,
patient,
we've been patient in all of these things, that all of a sudden the Lord sort of brings us into these moments of unexpected, divine encounter, right? I mean, when you read through the Gospels, there's a lot of mundane activities. I'm sure they got up, they had breakfast, they talked about the day, they set out on a road, and all of a sudden they encountered, right? There's a lot of chronology. There's a lot of like just living in the day in and day out.
Doing their job.
Doing what they're supposed to do. But then all of a sudden, the kingdom, they see the kingdom at work. And I think that can happen in our lives. But we're going to have to order our days in order to step into those things. Thanks for listening. Have you enjoyed this?
Yes.
Okay.
I have. I hope you guys have too. You guys can share, follow, rate, and review this podcast. By doing that will help us gain traction, and it just lets others know what to expect. You can follow my dad on X, at Milo Curtis, on Facebook at Milo Curtis, on Instagram at Milo Curtis. I make it a little bit more difficult. On Instagram at Olivia.Grace. _28, and then I'm on Facebook at Olivia Curtis. We have a newsletter, if you guys didn't know. We say it every week.
And we're sending something out every week.
Yeah, so visit thisresilientsoul.com and you'll find it.
Yeah.
You can also email us at hello@thisresilientsoul.com and just give us suggestions on what to talk about.
If you want to be on the podcast, if you have ideas, or you got questions.
Yeah, please just let us know. Any way you know how to. If you know us personally, just stop us, for real. It'll just brighten our day. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Use your time wisely.